The Equalizer 3 is out in theaters, the final part of the trilogy, directed by Antoine Fuqua and starring Denzel Washington, joined this time around by Dakota Fanning for an adventure that takes place in Italy. Robert McCall goes on another one of his trips to enact justice and punish evil men, but he gets injured and saved by an Italian doctor in a very small, picturesque Italian countryside town. And as he stays there and recuperates slowly, he learns to really appreciate the place and the people around him. But of course, trouble comes knocking. The Gamorra shows up and threatens to disturb the peace of the locals, and so McCall inevitably intervenes, and that leads to the usual violence. So I thought this was the weakest of the three films, and I think there are four main reasons why. First of all, the previous movies I found to be a really cool mix of violent action and a sort of philosophical explanation on the nature of man, questions of identity and whether that identity can change. The third one largely loses that balance. It almost completely forgoes the existential aspect and leans more into the ultra violence. It is by far the most explicitly brutal film of the three. And that leads me to the second point, which is that the action is also less impressive because it doesn't really rely on great choreography to such an extent as before, and tries to compensate with the brutality, which I found somewhat disappointing. Number three, I found the villain of this film to be the least interesting and most sort of simple one of the three, and I think he relates the least to the protagonist, which again in turn makes him less interesting. And that is an aspect that again was also, I think, a key strength of the previous two movies. And finally, reason number four, I think the entire Dakota Fanning subplot could be cut from the film and there would be no impact on the plot whatsoever. It just pads the runtime, in my opinion. It's not written very well, and also, she's made out to be actually not very competent, because if you think about it, everything she manages to accomplish within the film, McCall basically gives her on a silver platter. Now listen, it's not a bad film per se. I know I've been ragging on it quite a bit, but it's just average, where the previous two were genuinely good. So it's a definite step down, and it largely also feels like Denzel and Antoine Fuqua wanted to go for a vacation to a nice Italian town and just made a movie while at it. Which, by the way, it is almost criminal to me to make a movie in such a wonderfully picturesque locale and shoot it with such a desaturized gray color palette. The film is washed off almost all color and just feels boring as a result, visually speaking. Again, though, even though I didn't like it as much, I don't think it's terrible. If you're a fan of the franchise or Denzel Washington specifically, you can give it a chance, but otherwise, I probably skip it.